One day, I brought out a cup of very hot tea and set it aside. Almost immediately, houseflies began hovering around it. Out of habit, I moved my hand toward the cup, intending to cover it so the flies wouldn't settle on it. But just before I did, I paused. And then it struck me. There was no need. The tea was already hot. The flies would draw near, feel the heat, and instantly pull back. They hovered, but they could not settle. The heat itself was enough to keep them away. Later, as I reflected on that simple moment and aligned it with Scripture, a clear spiritual truth formed in my heart. This is exactly what happens when a believer is truly on fire for God. The Christian life was never meant to be cold, casual, or passive. Scripture calls us to spiritual heat. Never be lacking in zeal, but be fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Romans 12, verse 11. The phrase fervent in spirit means boiling, burning, aglow. God's desire is not occasional excitement, but sustained spiritual intensity. This fire is not emotional noise. It is a steady inner heat produced by intimacy with God. The flies could not land on the tea because the heat made it impossible for them to remain. Scripture explains this clearly. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. 1 Peter 5 verse 8. Notice the wording, seeking whom he may devour. That means not everyone is devourable. The enemy looks for cold hearts, lukewarm devotion, distracted minds, unguarded lies. But a believer who is burning, prayerful, word-filled, obedient, becomes difficult ground for the enemy to operate. Spiritual fire creates resistance. Scripture reminds us, is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? Zechariah 3 verse 2. We were not saved to cool down. We were rescued to remain in God's refining fire. For our God is a consuming fire. Hebrews 12 verse 29. This fire purifies, protects, and preserves the believer. As I continued thinking about that cup of tea, I realized something else. The flies were gone, but dust could still settle. Heat chased away the flies, but it did not stop tiny particles from falling quietly. If that dust were ignored, the tea would still become contaminated, even though it remained hot. And here is the spiritual truth. There are things that cannot survive fire, and there are things that settle silently despite fire. Scripture warns us, catch for us the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. Song of Solomon 2 verse 15. Not major sins, not loud rebellion, but small things, subtle compromises, quiet pride, familiar disobedience, unchecked habits, spiritual carelessness. They do not attack openly. They settle quietly, just like dust. This is why Scripture cautions us. Wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 12. Being on fire does not remove the need to be careful. Standing today does not cancel the need to watch today. Passion without vigilance is dangerous. Scripture balances zeal with discipline. Let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus. Hebrews 12 verses 1-2. Fire must be guarded, or contamination will creep in quietly. Jesus is not only the author of our faith, he is also the finisher. When our eyes remain fixed on him, fire remains pure, zeal remains holy, passion remains disciplined. Fire attracts God's presence, but a clean vessel sustains it. Yes, be on fire for God. Yes, be fervent. Yes, burn with zeal. But also, guard your heart. Watch for silent dust. Address small compromises. Keep your vessel clean. Because flies fear heat, but dust requires discernment. Burn brightly. Watch carefully. Fix your eyes on Jesus. That is the balanced life Scripture calls us to live. See you in the next video. Shalom.